Well, hey, welcome back to the Better Divorce podcast. I'm your host, Paulette Rigo. And just in case this is your first episode after 10 years, yep, 10 years I've been doing this, hard to believe. Just in case it's your first episode, let me tell you a tiny bit about who I am and why you should listen to this episode in particular. So grab a comfortable seat, maybe a pad of paper, and a beverage of your choice, depending on the time of day, whether that be coffee, tea, tequila, wine, whatever keeps you happy to get through what you're going through. I'm a certified divorce coach specializing in high conflict cases, particularly those that go to trial, and a family alternative dispute resolution mediator. I'm the founder of Better Divorce Academy, and I host the Better Divorce podcast and authored #1 best-selling book, The Better Divorce Blueprint. Many times people talk to me about divorce as if it's a breakup, and it is. So today we're going to talk about breakups. And if you've ever wondered whether life can actually become better after divorce, well, I would have named it Best Divorce Academy if I thought that that was appropriate, but I had to settle for better. So better it will. It's not just different, but more of a deeper, more authentic, more joyful experience on the other end. But most people have to get there. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So joining me today is Clay Schmidt. I'm so glad you're here, Clay. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Paulette. Great to be here. So happy to be here. And
I
yeah,
appreciate it.
breakup is definitely the beginning. You know,
Yeah, and
it's
that's really hard for people to think about. I never really thought about my breakup with my first husband as anything other than I'm young, I don't know what I'm doing, and I need help. I really think of it as another chapter. It did eventually end up being that way, and I'm happily remarried almost 9 years now. Hard to believe. So that's been quite some time since all of that has occurred. But so, what makes you want to work with people or help people? Because I don't think any of us just wake up one day and say, I think I want to write a book about breakup. So, how did you come to this revelation?
I came to it through pain. It was
Mm.
so painful going
Yeah.
through. I've been divorced twice, and this most recent breakup, I thought that was the one. I thought for sure we had so much alignment, so much shared values. We saw the world exactly the same. We were madly in love with each other at first,
Mhm.
and then when it goes bad and ends bad, it's like how did I get up here? How did I end up in this place? Like what happened? So in the beginning of that part, it feels like the world's over, depressed. Like if you go on the Facebook forums or the breakup groups, people are like, "Oh, I need to go to the ER. I'm suicidal," or what. They're like in bad place, and I
Yeah.
can totally empathize. I've been there. I was just there a few months ago, so it's not that long for me. But this last one, but then my first divorce taught me that it does get better. And with enough time, I'm able to look back and go, thank God I'm not in that relationship anymore. And thank you so much for all the lessons that I learned. Lessons I would not have learned any other way. And
Yeah.
it had to like hit me so hard to get me on my knees and say, okay, I surrender. I give up. My life is not working. I need help. And then the real help can show up. And, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And that's what happened in my first divorce. All these crazy teachers came and taught me stuff I didn't even know was a thing. And my life became so much richer and so much better. And looking back, my first divorce was the best thing that ever happened to me because it changed my life for the better. And I became me instead of this fake person that I was pretending to be.
Mm. Yeah, I can relate to so much of what you're saying. And you have a really diverse background being an author. Congratulations. I know the pain.
Thank you.
What is it that Mark Twain said? Writing is easy. You just sit down and at a typewriter and bleed. Right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah,
such
yeah.
hard work, but you're also a filmmaker, which is amazing, and a coach and a lifelong student of healing and relationships and personal transformation. I can relate to a lot of that because I myself, when I went through leaving the dance world behind, I taught performing arts for 20 years. I delved into birthing, became a birth doula, a lactation consultant, a yoga teacher trainer. I started my own registered yoga school and trained yoga teachers to become studio owners and write their own curriculums, and ended up moving to Belize. So, it's interesting. You find these people that take you by the hand, and you mention, when the student is ready, the teacher will come, or, whatever variation of that quote there is. So I can relate to a lot of what you're saying, and your own personal journey help you write this book, Breakup Is the Beginning, to help others get through that yourself. So, before we get into the book a little bit more, which I want to do, in depth on, was there any specific tipping point where you said, this is a pattern that I've found myself in, and I don't want to do this again? Because what is it? 85% of divorced people are remarried within 5 years. So I don't know what your time frame was, but did you see it was a repeating pattern, or was it just a chance?
That is a great question. Yeah, for me, lots of patterns. And strangely enough, in each relationship, it's been something different. Like in the first one, I was just so clueless, had no idea of what marriage took or what it needed. I just stood up in front of 100 of our friends, said these vows. I thought, that's it. We just said we're till death do us part. Rich or poor, of course we're gonna do these things. And then a year later, it dawned on me that this is not uh, going according to the vows, that we're not living up to them. So that was like the crack in the facade, I guess, of this mirage that it's all going to be roses and puppy dogs and rainbows, and not have to do any work, and just have it magically happen. And so
Mhm.
it started with just noticing that things aren't working, and I tried like reaching for books, like whatever books I found on Amazon. I had no idea. I hadn't found any of the big ones like Gottman or EFT or any of the like stuff that really helped. And so I just tried to improve our sex life, let's say, in the first marriage, and that didn't help at all. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to relate, but it was already over. And so that one, I basically learned how to talk, one of the big things was finance. Like I couldn't tell her my financial situation because I was scared to death that she would leave. She left anyway. And so I learned, okay, I might as well be honest up front. This is me. This is where I'm at. This is what I'm struggling with, or this is what I'm good at. This is what I suck at. Like rather than try to trick someone into marrying me and hoping when I spring on them the truth, they won't leave. I don't think it works well that way. So I learned to be myself, to be upfront, and then I thought going in, okay, I know how to be myself. I know how to communicate. Second marriage, I get divorced, and I think, oh, great, it's going to be easy. And then I found out that we didn't know how to relate. Like the real rubber meets the road when it's high conflict, high friction. And now it's like, okay, this is for real. We just had a baby. We need to relate in a healthy way. And so first thing I did was reach out to couples counselors, and everyone I went to had an amazing tool, an amazing method for relating, repairing these things. And so I was like, this is great. I'm getting a hard knocks education about how to be married, how to relate. And I found out the hard way that she wasn't ready. And so
Mhm.
that pattern was like, okay, next relationship, I want to be with someone who's ready to do this work. And so it was different with everyone. And I could continue, but I'll stop there. And
No, that's how this works. It isn't just bullet pointed list of things you need to do today when you get up in the morning. That's not how marriage or relationships work. It's an ongoing, continual process where you're able to be comfortable enough in your own skin where you can be authentic and transparent because you feel safe. And you mentioned that you didn't feel, I don't know if safe was your word, Clay, but
yeah,
you were afraid to share maybe some debt or some financial issues that you had, or even, assets. It doesn't always have to be debt, right? Or some sort of, I see it a lot with the work I do is, as soon as they're prompted to fill out the domestic relations financial affidavit, whether I'm working with them individually and coaching and teaching them about the divorce process, or I'm working with the couple in mediation, whether you DIY, mediate, collaborate, arbitrate, or litigate, you have to at least be transparent with the court if you're litigating. The court requires it. So if you can't be transparent in your relationship and you end up divorcing, at some point it will all come out in the wash. And that's many times why people stay married, because they'd rather sweep it under the rug and tiptoe around the elephant in the living room. And it's very common where people build resentment and the relationship starts to fall apart when there is everybody has their right to privacy, no doubt. But when it becomes more of a secret or a fear, it starts to crumble.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the that financial piece and feeling safe. I thought in my first marriage that I was the only one like keeping secrets or not divulging anything. And then during the divorce process, I found out she had a huge trust fund. I'm like, what? Like, what's going on here? But it explained a lot of why she was so scared to death to
sure.
have that conversation or to be upfront. She was afraid I was going to somehow go after this big trust fund that her parents had set up for her. And I technically, I think it was outside the bounds of me going after it if I wanted it anyway. But still, it was the fear, just not being able to talk about things and how paralyzing that can be. And it ends up killing the relationship anyway. So just be honest, like, hey, this is me. And that
Yeah,
was one of the big things I learned is that underneath all the BS, all the stuff, we're all the same anyway. We have the same needs, the same wants, the same fears. And so just be honest. There's great common ground and fertile ground for a connection when we just be honest, because we all have the same stuff underneath all of it. We have the same feelings. We all want the same things. We all want to be happy. We want our kids to be loved and nurtured and taken care of, and we want the same too. And so we all want that. So let's just be honest with each other. And
mm.
it's
But
where we have a nice foundation to build from.
yeah, but unfortunately, there's, I don't know, 70%, 80% of people, I don't know the exact number, do repeat unhealthy relationship patterns. Whether that be something they learned when they were a small child or as a teenager or as a young adult, maybe in the professional world, or just something they watched on TV or in the movies. We have this fantasy, like you mentioned, it's about the tuxedo and the dress and the wedding. And you say, I do. And, that's it. And we have a big party and we live happily ever after. But there's so much more to it. And we take a lot of that baggage with us. And some of us just have a tiny little wallet full of baggage. Others have a steamer trunk. And the fact that perhaps she did not feel, I don't know, free to share of what it was that her fears were with that trust that had been set up for her. And you're right. If it's, it depends on how things are done, but we have three categories of assets in divorce, everyone. There's premarital assets, non-marital assets, and marital assets. And those are things that everyone needs to talk about before you get married. What's premarital? That, hey, listen, if this doesn't work, I'm keeping A, you're keeping B. And what's non-marital? Inheritance and those type of things, and what might be appropriate to put perhaps in a prenuptial agreement, or if you're already married, would this be a conversation for a postnuptial agreement? They're actually quite successful, but I digress. We don't want to go quite down that rabbit hole, but I just wanted to pick up on that repetition of unhealthy relationship patterns. If anybody out there can relate, like, join the club. We get it. It's pretty important. And I make sure that, there's no regret with my clients, because regret is a terrible thing to have. And so, it's nice when you can do the due diligence and the homework before. But if you're already married and you're in this state where there isn't a lot of trust in the relationship, then it's not too late. Look at Clay and I. So it's all good. Um, yeah, I mean, it's a process, right? You go through it step by step.
Yeah. And it's, speaking of things we should do before we get married, we spend tens of thousands of dollars on catering and renting a place to get married, and all this focus on the dress and the cake or whatever it is. And how many couples spend $100 on counseling beforehand, or go see a mediator and talk about finances or whatever it is? But how about we put $1,000 into premarital, like counseling or coaching or anything to like give us some kind of a clue on what we're getting into, and
Yeah.
and when we do hit hard times, how we can navigate that. Like it's just shocking to me. And I the analogy I use is like we get into a ship and we neither one of us have any sailing experience. We have no maps. We don't have a GPS, nothing. And we're supposed to sail the wide, vast Pacific in this giant boat that we have no clue how to operate. And then we're shocked that we shipwreck. We're
Yeah.
just shocked, you know? And so it's that's one of the reasons I wrote this book is because I didn't have any handbook. No mentor came to me and said, "Here's how you do marriage." You know, my parents have been high school sweethearts. They didn't say a word about, here's what you do. I don't think they know, honestly, but I didn't get any guidance. And then when it goes bad, it's like it's hard to pull yourself out of the hole once you're in high conflict because it's without any tools. You got, oh, I got to learn tools and repair this and try to go to work and take care of the kids and pay the bills. It's like it's a lot to ask. And so that's for me, it's like spend $20 on a book or go to a seminar or workshop. Like Gottman's 2-day workshop was incredible. I learned so much. And it
Mm,
was, the running joke is also that half of you are here voluntarily, meaning that half of the people don't want to do the work. They're not ready. And so that's a big question to ask up front. Hey, if we get into a rough spot, are you going to take off on me? Are you just going to walk? Or are you going to work together? What's it going to look like?
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's different for everyone. You're either the person that is initiating the divorce or the breakup, right? And you honestly don't have to be married. I work with many people that have children together or they own properties together, but they didn't march down the aisle. So that kind of dances into a world of like, well, you still have crossed the world of legal entanglement. We don't realize that marriage is a legal binding contract. And once you buy real estate together or you have children, you're now tangling up the knots of what might also be considered legal in the sense of a real estate transaction or having to come up with a custody plan or a child support plan, even if you didn't put a ring on it. So it can get a little messy, but well, we're not married, so it doesn't matter. Well, I always say it depends. So yeah,
Mm.
it's a little tricky. Oh gosh. All right. So let's talk about like um that you had the first divorce and the second divorce. Uh are you in a new relationship?
I've been in two relationships since then. My
Okay.
after the second divorce, I was so beat up, so jaded. I just I had no faith in the institution. I thought, there must be something
Sure.
wrong with the way America does marriage because this is I tried it twice and it didn't feel like I had any chance. And so I met a woman who was single mom and equally as jaded. She just come out of a real high conflict marriage. And so we were just kind to each other for 6 or 7 years. And just that alone was enough to sustain that relationship of just like
Mhm.
being nice to each other. Like what a shocking way to relate, just being good.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, the only thing that broke that up was when the uh, pandemic thing hit. We had different views on it, and we found out how parallel our lives are, and we had so
Mhm.
little to do together and to share together. And so that was like a huge thing. I never saw something like that coming, so I didn't even know to ask. What are your views on this thing that's going to happen that shut down the
That
world?
none of us
Who
have been
thinks?
through before.
Yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
exactly. So that was a surprise. But other than that, it was like amazing to be with someone who didn't lose their stuff, who didn't have a rageaholic. Like that's my dad's um, how he raised me was he bottle and explode. So that was what I saw as parenting. And so to be
Right.
with someone who could like get upset but without raging, without yelling or hitting or doing any of that, that was a great, amazing experience. And then so the pandemic broke us apart with that, but then I've since had a 2-year relationship, and that was the first time I felt like I've been madly in love. And it was mutual, like shared values, shared everything. We just were crazy about each other, and I thought for sure that was going to be it. And at the end of the day, she wanted more of like a fancy life. I mean, I'm a single dad struggling to figure it out, and she wanted to go on fancy trips and dinners, and so at the end of the day, you could say it came down to money, and she wanted more than I had, and so that's what ended that.
Well, at least you were able to have that conversation.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, all these years and all these tools, at least we could talk. But the one thing that I really learned in that last relationship is in early on, I felt it in my gut that, oh, I've been here before. There's something off here, and I don't like the way she's treating me, and I talked myself out of it. And I realized in every single relationship I've been in, I've had that same feeling. Like some part of me
Mhm.
was like, either the way they're treating me is wrong, or this relationship isn't going to work, or I should say something or change something, and I didn't. And every time I would look back with 2020 hindsight and be like, my gut knew, my intuition knew, my guidance knew to either say something or change the course, and I didn't do it. And I paid the price heavily. I learned a huge lesson. I got a child out of my second marriage, which I'm just stoked to be a father, and that was great. And every excuse me, every relationship I learned something, and at the same time, I paid a heavy price by ignoring my gut and not listening to what I knew to be true.
Mm. So looking back now that you can kind of, in hindsight, retrospect, go back, because it's a beautiful lesson. The stages of grieving stop at letting go, surrender, and acceptance. But there really is that sixth stage of what is the lesson. So looking back now, what was your biggest lesson that your divorces gave you?
Whew. Um, well, the biggest was be myself.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
up front, like don't this whole like try to like dress up and like, put on the makeup or wear a suit or go to a fancy place and pretend like this is how it's going to be or flaunt money or whatever it is, or even just don't show um my views or what's important to me. So like now when I'm dating, I'm super upfront. Like this is what's important to me. This is where I'm at, whether it's financially or I'm a single dad. I have a child. Here's what my life looks like. Here's how much money I make, or here's my dreams. Here's my vision, my hopes. So just be honest and upfront. And it's a
Yeah.
great way to have a conversation with somebody. Just like be vulnerable. And I found every time that I'm vulnerable, somebody responds with equal vulnerability or
Mm.
empathy, and it's a it's a wonderful conversation instead of talking about the weather or sports or something that a dictionary
Superficial.
I could get anywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing is be myself.
Which is not easy to do, right? Sometimes we struggle with that. If you're struggling with that because sometimes we're wearing a mask and trying to be someone we're not, or maybe experimenting with being a chameleon about hobbies or jobs or relationships or family or where to live or what to eat. We change our minds sometimes, but when it really comes down to it, you know what makes you tick. You either like it or you don't, and not that wanting to hurt anyone's feelings, but I remember many times being in a career I did not like, and being in a marriage that felt uncomfortable. So I can relate. Was there a defining moment when you realized that your heartbreak could become your greatest teacher? Was there a tipping point where you woke up one day and said, "Aha, this is it. I've learned a lesson here."
With my first divorce, I found a excuse me, a mentor within
Mm.
2 or 3 months. And so I'd go to see him weekly, and it was every week I'd have a big aha. It was like a awakening, enlightenment, whatever you want to call it. I was gobbling up information. And so it was almost weekly that I'd have a huge like, oh, where was this all my life? How come nobody taught me this? Like, oh, this is so amazing. And speaking of being yourself, like when I discovered nonviolent communication and the idea that feelings are universal, and there's like a list of feelings, and it's more than just happy, sad, and angry. There's like
Sure.
hundreds of them.
Yeah.
That was like
Yeah.
shocking to me,
There's
and it
gradients,
gave me permission to feel. And so having a list of feelings and needs allowed me to communicate like I couldn't do it before because I didn't know how I was feeling. You asked me how I'm feeling, I'd be like, well, I don't know, fine, like good, like that's about as
I
bad
love that
good as or
I
bad.
love that you say that. Yeah, I love that you say that, because in the first chapter of Better Divorce Blueprint, one of the first things I asked the potential reader client person that's going through this is, what are your experiences? What are you feeling? And when I work with them, Matt, a lot of them like are so out of touch with who they are and what they're thinking. And there's 230 core values and picking the top 5. And it takes a lot of work for these people because they've been so disconnected, so unplugged from their sense of self. It's shocking. You can't make smart choices moving forward. You can't discern what's in your best interest and what's in the best interest of the couple or the family if you really are unaware of that. I always found it shocking because I had to go through it myself too. I pretended for so many years that everything was great. Everything was fabulous. I loved my life. I loved my job. I loved everything. And finally, when I just, I think fell on the floor and like the Wizard of Oz, I turned into a big blob of fabric. I melted. It was nobody threw anything on me either. It was my own revelation of like, wow, I have got to get a hold of this. And I felt like so many people do that divorce equals failure. Did you ever struggle with that?
Oh man, I thought I was ruined, damaged. Like, that was part of the shame around it. Just that I'm afraid to tell people I'm divorced because that was like, even going to therapy, like back then was like, there's something
Sure.
wrong with me. I'm a basket
Right.
case. Like somehow
You're a
broken.
loser. You're broken.
Yeah, all that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And eventually, but that's the gift of really going through the process and doing it with someone who's skilled guide. And that's why I put all of it in the book. Because like I came out the other side like a badge of honor. Because like I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm awake now. I have skills. I have tools. I'm in touch with my feelings. I know myself. Like I didn't know myself for the first 30 years.
Yeah.
And a big part of being able to be myself and know what I'm feeling is being able to go within and listen to that inner voice. And
Yeah.
that's my both mentors encouraged me to meditate, and that gave me like an anchor both away from the pain of the divorce and the breakup and just the misery, the daily grinding, like she did this, I did that, why did like all that. In meditation, I could have 15, 20 minutes of just bliss, and then ideas would come in, insights, guidance, and I'd start to be myself, get closer to myself, know what to say, know what to do. Like the first year of the divorce, it was just communicating through lawyers, and it was just such a waste of money. And then finally I had the insight, like, why am I doing this? We haven't made any progress. And so I went and got a mediator. We did 1 hour, and just seeing all the possibilities on a whiteboard, good, bad, and ugly, it became crystal clear how we wanted to wrap this up. And so it's like just having tools like that of just knowing what to do and what's the next step, like being able to calm, regulate myself, not being in the noise, or like you said, the blob on the floor, just melting into nothing. Like no, come home to myself so that I can be myself and know what to do next. What's the best for me? What's the next step?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if anybody's, watching the video. Obviously, you're watching me nod. My head's going to fall off. But if you're listening to the audio, I'm nodding the whole time because as a mediator, yes, yes, it does often take a neutral third party to kind of take the emotion out of it and use a whiteboard or a piece of paper, whatever, and demonstrate, viscerally, kinesthetically on paper what your options are. Kind of putting the emotion on the shelf for just a moment and looking at the pragmatic solutions and option A, option B, option LMNOP. Sometimes there's many, many options. I'm very creative. I just wrapped up a mediation this morning where they were fighting, arguing, banging heads over big issues, houses, cars, money. But the last 2 issues, are you ready? Christmas ornaments and a wheelbarrow. I was going to call it yard tools, but it was really just a wheelbarrow. And I didn't want to be disrespectful and say, "What? Excuse me, you're fighting over Christmas ornaments? Let's go to
Yeah,
the store. I'll buy you all new ones. Who cares?" Obviously they wanted the memorable, ones that the 5-year-old made in kindergarten
for
and all those
sure.
things. And you can't replace that stuff. But that's the reason to spend years in court and spend thousands and thousands of dollars on litigation. In my opinion, that's the definition of insanity. It's insane. But I just, want everyone to feel normal out there. Some people, we got the house figured, the furniture, although that wasn't fun. And this is just one example. I could give you many of why there's this feeling of, not being able to see through the fog, right? And our
Yeah.
audience often says they feel like they've lost not only their spouse or their house or their stuff, but their identity. Right? Husband, wife, mother, father, best friend, like because there's a little bit of a trauma bond or a codependency there if we're getting into any dysfunctional behavior or even functional behavior, because I see that attachment, right, to the label of, well, if I'm not that, what am I?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well said. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's well, there's emotional stuff. It's not about the stuff. There's always deeper emotional things.
Yeah.
But I remember first divorce, like not wanting to take that ring off because that meant I'm alone, and that's final.
Yeah.
Like if and it was a hard thing to do, and that first year of lawyers, that was all about me being hurt, and
Yeah.
trying to get some
Wounded.
pound of flesh from her rather than, I somehow that kept it going or kept it alive or it wasn't final. Like this whole loneliness, I'm a loser thing could be delayed another day if I could exchange another lawyer bill or something.
Sure.
And then in the second marriage we bought like $5 rings because we were like we had changed our whole thing about it. It's like we spent tens of thousands of dollars on this last one and that ended in flames. So like we just bought a house. Like why would we, or we could put that money in our child's college fund or something. Why are we going to spend more money on stuff that doesn't mean anything? And so but it's, yeah, I get it. The emotional, the attachment to these things, it's never about the stuff. It's always about there's some hurt, some pain there. And if I give up the thing, I have to, one more wound, one more insult, it's just going to bring me down. And often we're
Mm,
just treading water, just trying to survive. And so what we really want is someone to say, "Hey, I care about you, even though I'm throwing you away and getting divorced. I still love you."
yeah.
Like that's the
Yeah, it is difficult for many people, and there's two sides of it. And I see it both when I'm mediating and have lived it personally. But you don't get a blue ribbon or a trophy to put on your bookcase or your wherever because your spouse left you and that you were the victim. Or you were the person that there's no, the court doesn't keep score with, is plaintiff or defendant. Are you the leave or the leaver? Or the left or the lever.
God.
That's an emotional decision. That's something you work with a divorce coach or therapy. Be careful. I could get into a long conversation about the difference between that. Where when you work with a therapist, it's more about patterns of the past, and depending on the acronym after the therapist, counselor's name, psychologist, psychiatrist, whether it's a licensed clinical social worker or, but sometimes about what's happened in the past. Whereas divorce coaches tend to be about the future. How are we getting through this so that you get the next life, that breakup, right? That is the beginning. That's like kind of the impetus for creating that next chapter versus getting stuck in the past. It's not easy. There is a lot of grieving that has to happen and much of an identity crisis that people go through. And, is it the relationship or the future that they've imagined? Sometimes it's not just leaving the spouse or the house or the 401k or the car, but it's, well, the whole image or the fantasy, the imagine, right? The life that they desired and longed for is now gone. And that
Mhm.
is really the grieving process, much like a death, right?
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know my second wife, she like we had bought the house and remodeled it, and that meant a lot to her. And it was hard, like giving that up. Like, okay, we finally got the house with the picket fence and the child and the community and all that. And so for her, it was very much an identity thing, and that's
Yeah.
why she was very reluctant to give that up. And so I get it.
Yeah.
Like it's hard, it's painful. Like there's a lot of big feelings there.
Yeah, a lot of big feelings. And I want everyone to know that's okay. Having big feelings means you're human and that you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable. You're ripping the Band-Aid off and not putting another Band-Aid on top of three others. The only way it's ever going to heal is to take the Band-Aid off. And, if you keep picking the scab, it won't be good. And this is where I see the patterns of so many intelligent, articulate, educated, bright people that stay in unhealthy relationships much longer than they should. It's a pattern of sweeping it under the rug. It's going to be okay. I can fix it. I can make them change, right? I can make them want that fancy lifestyle, that expensive ring, that vacation, that fancy car, or I can make them want a simple life. I can make them want to be more like me. So our core values are congruent and that we have the same paths, that we're really truly on board with how I see my future as they see their future. And it's like railroad tracks, we're not meant to be on a monorail with our spouse. We're kind of like we're our own person, but yet you want them to be congruent. As soon as one starts to veer off, and God forbid the other one does too, and we're not going together, it's a derailment. It's destined for failure if the two parties are not living in that congruent, and that's really hard when two sane, educated, like healthy people will stay in an unhealthy relationship. And kind of what role does shame play in divorce too? Of like, am I the reason? Are they the reason? Are we the reason? What part did I play in the demise of the relationship? And taking ownership of that. There's so much. And I know I'm digressing, but this is a big topic, right, Clay?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Let's talk
I
about
wanted
this.
to
Go ahead.
go ahead. I was going to say that I found that the majority of my suffering is the story, and it's always about a future that's
Yeah.
doom and gloom that I don't like. So if I just catch myself, okay, that's just a story. Come back to, okay, right now my needs are
Yeah.
met. I got a roof over my head. I have food on the table. I got people who love me. And, all is well right here, right now. But it's always that future story is some doom and gloom, and that's where my suffering is. So if I want to feel better, be here.
Yeah. Yeah. The power of now, as Eckhart Tolle says, right?
Exactly.
Yes. Yes. I'm a meditation yoga teacher, so I've studied it all.
Yeah.
So breakup is the beginning. The title is incredibly hopeful, I have to say. Why did you choose that title?
Honestly, it got me through my last breakup. Just having, and I lived it with both my divorces, where I came out the other side so much better off, so much richer, so much fuller life. Um, and in every aspect of life, being able to communicate, being able to talk to whether it's a spouse or people at work or a stranger on the street. Like, God, like I can't imagine going my entire life not learning how to communicate or how to relate to people or how to, if somebody steps on my toes, whether it's emotionally or figuratively or actually steps on my toes, being able to respond instead of, blowing up and getting into a fight with them. Like, just basic skills like that. And so that's why I put it all in the book, because I'm like, I wish somebody had given me this roadmap. It would have just saved me so much suffering and so much grinding and just angst. And it doesn't have to be that way. It's and a big part of the thing that is frustrating for me in relationship is I found that when we got divorced and had a child together, we had to co-parent and learn how to communicate and relate anyway. So why not do it while we're married? Like, we're going to have to raise a child together. You're going to have to communicate somehow, even if it's through lawyers or courts. You're still sending information. So why not learn to do it together? Why not learn to relate together? Even if you don't like the person, at least get the skill. It's like if you're going to repair your house, you need a toolbox. So why not have a relationship toolbox? You don't have to use them, but at least know what the tools do, so that maybe one day you want to use them. So that would be my plea to everyone, to learn how to relate and communicate. It'll make the world a better place, guaranteed.
Mm. If someone is listening today who just signed their divorce papers yesterday or recently, what would you tell them?
I'd probably start with the question of, like, what did you learn, or where are you at right now? Like, how do you feel about it? If you feel good about it, then I probably won't have to tell them anything, because they did all the steps that I put in my book, that I've gone through all the stages. But if they're still lost, I'd say, oh, here, first let me give you a big hug. It's probably still a lot of hurt there, and then let's go do something fun together, and then let's meditate or do some kind of breath work or something that it can bring you back to you. Because like there's some gift, some music, some genius inside of you. And if that hasn't come out yet, if you haven't found that, then I don't want another person. They say like when an old person die, a library is lost. And so there's all this genius in all of us. And I want to see that come out and be brought out. And so for me, is the beginning was about unlocking that. That's what happened in my first divorce. Like all these tools and wisdom and creativity that I had inside of me was just being stifled. I wasn't using it. So that cracked me open and gave me permission to be myself, the real me, and to express myself fully, not afraid, not scared about what people are going to think or what society might say or the consequences or I'm going to be broke or whatever. Just do it. Just be me. So I would say I'm much happier and richer just being myself. And so I'm super grateful that those relationships forced me to do that work, to be me and to learn how to communicate and relate and express myself fully.
Mm. So I know we touched on repeating old patterns, and in some ways, it's almost like people subconsciously or unconsciously marry the same person in a different body. Whether that's unconscious patterns repeating themselves, being unaware. But it's this matter of like overlapping healing and dating and creating, uh, should we say, not a funeral, a release, kind of putting it to bed. Thank you for the lessons, taking from the mat what serves you and leaving behind what doesn't, taking from the marriage what serves you and leaving behind what didn't. The lessons, right? What is the lesson that you learned right before you go into it? So I do find sometimes people will just jump right into dating because they feel lonely or
Mm-hmm.
it's what they're supposed to do. And what mistakes do you find, or I don't know if you write about it in the book, um, do you find people make when jumping into another relationship too quickly? Do you have any words of wisdom about what that should look like, or what needs to occur before they're ready to jump back into the pool?
After my third 7-year relationship, so this was the relationship where we're kind to each other. I met a woman who lived like 5 blocks from my ex. So same town, similar career, same belief system. I'm like, okay, something, it was like a red flag, huge red flag. They're like, okay, same town, real close to each other. They seem the same. They have the same personality. They like the same things. So I'm like, okay, all the warning light bells were going off. Red flag, red flag, red flag. And so I'm like, okay, I'll pursue it anyway. So one of the things I found is either I'm going to repeat the pattern or it has to be like imago, this theory that it has to be really, really similar and then I'll get a different outcome. So I was hyper aware going into it. Am I repeating this pattern or am I going to get a different outcome? And after like a month, I was like, this is exactly the same. I'm going to repeat the same pattern. And so I ended it. I was like, I'm not going to repeat the pattern. So that was a huge thing. But I got to that awareness by making lists. Okay, every person I've ever dated, what do they have in common? What were their qualities? What were the things I liked? I have a list of likes and dislikes. Often after the fact, I find the list of dislikes is like 3 or 4 times longer than the likes. So I'm like, why am I with this person if I hate all the stuff about them? But when I was in the relationship, I didn't look at any of that. So like it's really part of mining the gold and learning the lessons is just write it down, like journaling. That's a huge part. Like what happened? What did I like? What did I not like? Like what were the big fights? Like what was that about? And a lot through introspection and having a dialogue with myself, I come to the lesson on my own. Like nobody has to show it to me. By me just looking at what happened, it becomes obvious. But if I don't actually stop, write it down, and think about it and reflect on it, I am going to get in the same relationship and probably have the same exact outcome. And so for me, it's just pause and start writing it down. And if you're totally clueless and unaware, find a guide, find a counselor, find a mentor of some kind to just, hey, here's what happened in my last relationship. What can I do? What happened? That's where I was in my first divorce, clueless. I had no chance. And so my mentor gently, patiently guided me. I went to see him for 3 years. And so I would do both those, like journal, buy the divorce books, get Paulette's book, get my book, read it, find some kind of mentor. Like it's way cheaper than divorce. way cheaper and way less painful. So just, go do
And
it. So
even if it were free, the idea of having to go through that amount of time and anguish and conflict, it's agonizing, yeah. 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 So you mentioned the red flags, and there's I actually in my book list the 21 top reasons couples divorce, and then I list the 38 reasons why, or not reasons, but symptoms, shall we say, of what that looks like. But whether there be 10 or 20 or 300, I'm not so concerned about the number. But there are a lot of red flags, right? Or I like to call them deal breakers, right? But what are the green flags that people should look for after divorce to know that it is about chemistry or consciousness in the relationship and having emotional safety and feeling authentic? I know we've touched on a lot of those, but if we can eliminate the red flags, what is it that makes somebody know that this relationship is worth pursuing?
that's a good, that's a great question. Reminds me of that quote that no one can tell you you're in love, you just know. So
Yeah, it's
it's
beautiful.
an inner feeling.
Yeah,
Like in that last relationship, I'd never felt that way before, but I didn't know it could be that good until I was there. And so
yeah,
sometimes you just got to feel it.
yeah,
And as far as, deal breakers, like the big one for me is growth, as in if we're having some issue and we're not willing to deal with it or to find some resolution, then in a way that's a deal breaker because we're just going to
yeah,
keep beating each other up over this thing for years and years and years. And
yeah.
so for me, green flags is all about feeling how I feel inside. Like, so for me, it goes back to presence. You mentioned the power of now. That was like the first book I got after my first divorce, was The Power of Now. And it was amazing. And I came away from that book with more questions than answers. So it was a
Sure.
process of meditation and being present. And the more present I am, I find the more that I know inside, whether this person is a yes or a no. And so it's about taking daily time to listen to that voice. And whether I have to journal or meditate or go for a jog or breathe or see a friend or a counselor, but just listening, like the answers are there. Like, asking somebody else whether I should marry somebody or not, I don't put much stock in that, but I've always found that my gut knows. And so I just have to pause and listen to myself, basically, like listen to that voice inside. The answers are there. So I found I need to, but I got to give space to that person, give myself the kind of love that I want from others and actually listen to what's inside me.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's, I believe, one of the ingredients of the healing process, where that healing, is more of a lifelong practice. It isn't brushing your teeth. Oh, check, I did that today, so I'm all healed. It's not like a destination. Like, oh, I'm there, I've arrived. Watch out, everyone. It's this ongoing habituation and pattern, a positive pattern, right? Where you have a daily habit, whether it be a walk in nature, journaling, working with a mentor, a therapist, a coach, being authentic with yourself, taking off the mask, asking yourself those deep questions like, who am I? What the hell am I doing here? And how can I serve? How can I help myself and others get through this with a lot of grace and dignity and wisdom instead of just trugging along and pretending everything is fine? Self-forgiveness is important too. Sometimes you just got to give yourself a break. We all make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
No one's perfect. And
Mm-hmm.
forgiveness for yourself and your spouse. The past is over, as they say. You can't undo it. And you got to come back forward, which is why it's a beginning. And you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned purpose, and I like to call it Dharma. Um, the one of my mentors, Rod Stryker, wrote a book called The Four Desires, and it's all about Dharma and writing your Dharma code. And it's a very impactful in the work that got me to getting through my 8.5 year divorce, and also finding the courage to get remarried. If anyone who's gone through an 8.5 year divorce that included a 12-day trial and a 4 year
Wow.
Supreme Appellate Court process in state has the courage, the guts, or the stupidity, I don't know, knock on wood, the ignorance to say, sure, what the hell, I'll try again. So far, so good. Um, but the man that I married is probably the most authentic human that walks this earth. So
Oh,
that,
that's lovely.
like you said, Clay, right? When you know, you know. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what is the best way for people to learn more about you and your work and your book and to follow you? Dare I say, stalk you on social media? Just kidding. So people can learn more about you.
Yeah, my website is clayisland.com, and I have YouTube, Instagram, the usual things, but clayisland.com is the best way to find me. And I have all my books there, my courses, in-person teaching, and yeah, you can learn all about me. I've been making videos for 30 years, and so there's lots of stuff there. And yeah, come check it out. Come call me and stalk me away. Hey, I'm a big, strong guy. I can handle a little stalking, so come
Well,
see me.
as a filmmaker, I'm sure you've got that down. So I love this conversation, everyone. I do truly believe that divorce is the beginning. It doesn't have to be doom and gloom. Yes, it's painful. It's not easy, but it's a lot better than staying in a relationship that is unhealthy and unhappy. So thank you,
Yes.
Clay, for your time and sharing your story. I know it takes a lot of vulnerability to be able to do that yourself. And I think that that shows so much inspiration to people having contemplated managing or surviving divorce on their own. It's not easy to talk about divorce with family or friends or strangers, but the more you learn about it and you see success stories, you realize, hey, this isn't so bad. I'm going to be all right. So if you feel like mediation is a possibility, and I believe that 97% of cases can privately mediate. So that means there's no plaintiff and no defendant and no lawsuit and no court. You get to save all the unnecessary legal fees, keep your private life private, and have the partners work with a neutral party that can create a memorandum of agreement that the couple can create together for the betterment of the family, so you can avoid all that litigation nightmare that I went through. So, and Clay went through. Join the club, Clay, I know. So
I know.
thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Paulette. Wonderful to talk to you, and I really appreciate the opportunity and the experience and connecting and hearing your story and letting me share mine. It's been wonderful. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
I am honored to have been given this gift. And I guess, people are like, wait, how long have you had the podcast? I'm like, it's all 10 years now. So I guess I have to keep doing something right. So
There you go.
thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. It means a lot that people reach out to me, and I'm honored to have you here and share your story. And everyone, hope you found this episode helpful. Reach out to Clay and, of course, me. You know how to find me, Paulette at betterdivorceacademy.com. And, of course, betterdivorceacademy.com itself. So till next time, make it better. I'll see you soon. And I will hit stop.